All right. Hey, friend. Welcome back to Grace Filled Grip Podcast. This is episode number 93. And today we have my friend on, Monica Swanson, to talk about raising amazing kids who love God, like their family, and do the dishes without being asked. Wow, that's a big one. Monica is a popular blogger, host of the Boy Mom podcast, which is now Monica Swanson podcast, and the author of Boy Mom and Raising Amazing. The Swanson family comes to us from the beautiful North Shore of Oahu, Hawaii. Welcome, Monica. It's always so fun to chat with you and catch up. How are you doing today?
Oh, I am great. The only thing that could make this better is if we were in person. I would love to
Yes.
sit down over a real cup of coffee with you.
That would be amazing. And especially because you're in Hawaii, I would take you up on that one. So, how's the weather there? So, here in Kansas City, our weather, it's March as of this recording. And this week we have had 14 degrees, we've had ice and snow.
What?
Please tell me it's better where you're at.
Well, I was actually going to say, I feel like, doesn't Kansas have a lot of lightning and thunderstorms?
Yes, we do.
We have had the last 24 hours,
Really?
tons of lightning and thunder. Now, it's kind of the tropical storm. It's raining right now, but yeah, as you can see, as we record, I'm sleeveless. It's warm. I can't
Uh,
complain.
oh, that sounds so dreamy. So dreamy. Not fair. Not fair.
Uh,
So, Monica, for our audience, most
yeah.
people I'm sure already know you, but for those that are new to you, tell them a little bit about yourself, your family, your boys. Tell us a little about you.
Oh, I love to do that. Thank you so much. Great to meet all of you listening. Yes, well, to be fair, my husband and I are both from the Pacific Northwest, so we grew up knowing things like seasons. But we have been in Hawaii almost 22 years now, so that's pretty wild. And we moved here for my husband's medical residency program. So I thought it would be a 3-year stay, but we have not left. So we do have 4 boys. 3 are somehow legal adults. So, like you, I'm in that season of life. But I've also got a 12-year-old keeping me humble and young, or making me old. I'm not sure which. And they're all boys. So I've done a lot of writing about raising boys. My first book, Boy Mom, What Your Son Needs Most from You, came out in 2019, and that's been a ton of fun. And then I had the Boy Mom podcast, which just here in the new year, I changed over to the Monica Swanson podcast because my book, Raising Amazing, is really for moms and dads of boys and girls. My husband has a voice at the end of each chapter. He has a little section, a word to the dads, which I love so much. And all my boys have sections throughout this book as well. So it was really a family affair. And I just, my heart is to encourage families to really just be a voice of positivity and say, yes, we can do this. There's so much bad news and so many scary statistics out there. And I just say, there's a lot we can do. There's no guarantees, no, but there's a lot we can do as parents and to build strong families, raise amazing kids. We've homeschooled all of our boys, so that's part of our story. And kind of like you, we live on a small little tropical farm and raise chickens and fruit and just love the life that God's given us.
Mhm. Oh, I love that. I love that. And you had just touched on the culture and the fear mentality, and it is
Hmm.
hard. This is
Yeah.
the hardest job that
Mm.
we will ever have, whether you're a
Yeah.
stay-at-home mom or you're part-time or whatever it is you're managing.
Yeah.
Parenting is the hardest job. So how do you stay positive and hopeful about raising the next generation when you know how important
Mm.
it is?
Yeah. You know, I'm just thankful for God's word that is never changing. And I just look around and I think, wow, our culture changes the rules every week. I mean, you cannot keep up. And so for me to maybe appreciate that now I'm in my 50s and I can look back and see all the changes and the trends and the voices that have come and gone. And I'm like, what's the one thing that's enduring and never changing? The word of God and God's principles, which, some people are like, well, it's not super clear in the Bible how we're supposed to raise our kids. Well, there's some biblical principles that will apply no matter what, through all time and through every trend and cultural shift. So for our family, it's just been making sure we know where our anchor is and making sure that we raise kids from a biblical perspective, that we have open conversations, that we address everything going on around us just from a biblical standpoint. And so far, that's been effective. We've been really blessed to just keep a really strong relationship with our kids, and they're best friends with each other. And doesn't mean we haven't had hiccups and challenging times, but it means we continue to come back to one another and to the truth. So
Mhm.
it's not easy. It is a tough world. Evil is everywhere, and we need to cling to God and His Word more than ever.
Mhm. Yes, yes, I agree. I love, and you had mentioned this before too. I love how in each chapter, your husband writes
Yeah,
in there as
yeah,
well, and your children. So
yep.
tell us a little bit about why you decided to do that. I love it.
Yes. Well, the truth is, my husband has so much wisdom. And like I mentioned, he's a physician, but all of my writing, I run by him. And I'm sure similar with you, I have conversations with my husband all the time about what I'm writing. And so I feel like so much of what I share is truly coming from him. And I've almost felt guilty. Like I take all the credit, but
Yeah.
he's where the wisdom comes from. And so I was like, hey, babe, since this one is for moms and dads, what if you actually sat down and wrote a little word to the dads? And I think of it like a Cliff Notes version. I'm like, here's the chapter. He would read what I wrote. We would work on it together. And then I'd say, if you just had to say a few words to the men, like, most men, and God bless those who will read it, the whole book. I know some do, and I think that's awesome. But a lot of men just don't have the time reading parenting books. And so I was just like, what would you say if you just sat down, had, 3 to 5 minutes to speak to the men? And he did such a great job, just really cutting it down to the most important things,
Mhm.
giving some hard words, but also sharing authentically from his experience. And so I think that was really a special feature of the book. And I laugh because for me, I write quickly and then I need to edit a ton. But my husband, even a text message, our family teases him because it takes him forever to craft like a short text message. So I was like, what are we getting ourselves into? You have to write for every chapter of this book. And it did take him a long time, but wow, his parts really came out good. So I'm so thankful he did it.
Yeah, it did turn out really good. And I love having the perspective from the dad and your boys
Mhm.
too. I mean,
Yes.
boys are just a different as
Yeah.
a boy mom myself of three. It is
Yep.
just a different world. And I just think that makes your book so much more real and
Mhm.
relatable. I love that you did that. So I
Thank you.
have a quote from your book. So
Oh.
I'm just going to read this directly out of here. It says, I remember that my job is not so much to tell my children how they should
Mm,
behave, but to show them to the
mm,
best of my abilities what a good life really looks like.
mhm,
You say
mhm,
amazing kids grow out of amazing families, and amazing families don't happen by chance. What
mhm.
is the first step? For those of us listening that want an amazing family, what is that first step that you would recommend for them?
Yeah. Well, I think the first step is the hardest and yet maybe not the most obvious, and that is for us as parents to just live our very best, most amazing life in front of our kids. And that means everything we wish for our kids, asking ourselves, are we modeling that? Is that if we want our kids to have a strong spiritual life, are we modeling what that looks like? If we want our kids to be healthy and take care of themselves, are we modeling that?
Mhm.
All the things that we hope for them in relationships and in all the things that they do, I think the best thing we can do is to just show them, what does it look like to live an amazing life? And it's not easy. It's not easy when you're tired. It's not easy when you work and run a home, but I think it's some accountability that's good for us because it just calls us up to live the kind of life we really want to live anyways. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think modeling is huge, and then letting the overflow of what we are living spill out into conversations around the dinner table. All the things we talk about when we drive along with our kids, or we're just going through our day, it's going to spill out naturally. And I always bring up Deuteronomy chapter 6 and chapter 11, where it just talks about teaching our kids the commands of God as we get up, as we walk along the street, as we lie down. And I'm like, that is not family devotions once a week. That is not, going to church together. That's a lifestyle. And
Right.
I think that that's where it really comes down. Like, that's where the authentic living is played out, is as we go through our days authentically in front front of our kids. So that's the best advice. And it's hard.
It is hard. And I love that you mentioned the car rides, just the
Hmm.
natural, wherever you're going, whatever you're doing, you can just bring it in with
Hmm.
worship music or conversations.
Hmm.
Those little moments, we all think that it has to be some big hour-long thing every
Right.
Sunday afternoon, Bible
Uh-huh.
time, whatever. And those are good and definitely do
Sure.
those too. But it is the here and there, every minute you can,
Hmm.
pouring into them. So you talk about modeling spiritual practices and enriching relationships with God as the key
Hmm.
thing to model for our kids. Tell us, especially during those teenage years that we've
Yeah.
both been through,
Hmm.
it's a little more difficult with the little ones.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
have more control,
Yeah.
and tell us how you do that with teens.
Right. You're absolutely right. I think when they're little, they still love to curl up in mom's lap and read Bible stories, and they're pretty open to doing whatever you want them to do. But it's true, as they grow up, I think probably the most important thing I have discovered is how important outside influences are as they grow up. It's important that we continue to speak truth, but it's often not quite enough anymore just to hear it coming from mom or mom and dad. And so we've really been intentional about making sure our kids are connected with people outside of us who we trust, who we know are speaking truth. And so we've been blessed to have a healthy church and a youth group with leaders who want to pour into kids. We've made sure our kids are, plugged into not just a weekly youth group, but a small group meeting where they have a couple guys and a leader who they can really be honest with and maybe talk about things they're not likely to talk to us about anymore.
Mhm.
And then I'm also just kind of guarding the other influences. It's such a challenge these days, but staying on top of technology, knowing what's in front of their eyes, what is going into their ears, just being really involved on a daily basis with having the conversations about where are your influences coming from and how can we help you? How can we come alongside because we love you? Set some boundaries. Sometimes that means saying no to some things, but saying we really want to be intentional because we know that your future depends on it. So, having some good conversations about all of those things.
Yeah, and I think you're right on the money when it comes to that church influence and the youth groups and the small
Mhm.
groups. I mean, that's so important. When those are your kiddos' friends,
Mm,
you know the families that they're coming from, and they have good biblical Christian worldviews.
yep.
It just makes a world of It's still tough. It's still
Yeah.
very tough,
Hmm.
but it helps in the situation, definitely.
Yes, so much. It's
Yeah.
it's been a game changer for us. I'm convinced, and now I have a 12-year-old, so I'm like, I really want to be careful as he grows up to do the same thing because it's easy to get tired. When you've got a few kids and you're down to that last one or two, sometimes you're just like not as on your game. And it's crazy how we do have an enemy that really wants to find the cracks and come in and wreak havoc where he can. And so being on guard and aware and asking God for discernment and wisdom, it's not a once and done thing. It's a daily battle. And yet it's so beautiful when you've got those grown kids like you do and you're so proud of them and you can say, wow, I'm so glad I put the effort in.
Yes, yes. It was the hardest thing we've ever done, but nothing is more rewarding seeing your adult
Mhm.
kids live out a good, solid Christian life. So tell me a little bit
Yes.
about your household and how you handle the dreaded technology. I feel so blessed
Oh,
that, I'm a little bit older than you and
mhm.
had my kiddos my first two, it really wasn't an issue till they got old
Yep.
enough to where
Mhm.
and they didn't grow up with I mean, they had their little Nintendo things or whatever, but it
Mhm.
wasn't like it was with my younger two. So I
Exactly.
do feel bad for
Yeah.
parents, that
Mhm.
are raising kiddos in this generation where they're handed an iPad when they're
Yeah.
two.
Oh,
So tell us what's the structure like in your life? Because there is a point, it is real life, and you like me and you are both on technology right now, and we
oh,
both
for
on
sure.
Instagram and all the things. So, there it's that balance of at what
Yeah.
point do you do that? So tell us a little bit about how you've managed that.
Right. Well, no doubt, I will say it's a work in progress. Like, I don't think that I could say we've arrived, do what we're doing. I would say we have daily conversations. And so maybe I'll start with one of the things I like to focus on, and I talked about this in Boy Mom as well as Raising Amazing, but we as a family really try to focus on all the things that are a big yes, all the things you can do without limits. And so for us, I think when you focus too much on like, oh, technology, and you just get so like laser focused on all you it almost narrows things to the point that you forget there's a lot of good stuff out there. And so we try to focus so much on, our kids are all into sports, and they surf. Fortunately, my youngest is a golfer, and golf takes a lot of time. So
Right.
when you focus on a school day and then you golf and then you have chores, it's like, hey, there's not a whole lot of time left. So we really, first and foremost, try to focus on all the other things. Like, don't make technology the biggest deal. But then when it does come down to, okay, now we're home, and now that 12-year-old is absolutely magnetically drawn. He doesn't have his own device, but he can find mine. Like, he is a ninja when it comes to like finding a screen to get on.
Right.
And we are not I've said before, like, we're not the family that does weekly devotions at a certain time on a certain day of the week. We're a little bit relaxed in our style. And so we haven't had super set um, rules for technology, other than we just try to make limit it as much as we can. And so, yes, filters on everything. That's my number one rule. Kids can get around filters. They're not foolproof, but they help a lot. So
Mhm.
whatever you choose, look for a good filter that will at least block, alert you, stop them from stumbling across pornography, because that's my biggest fear. I just do not want my kids, they're going to see it eventually, but any way you can stop them from finding it, or it from finding them, I say set them up for success that way. And then, yeah, have rules. So just because everybody else is doing it doesn't mean that it's okay. And your kids' friends are probably on video games and devices a lot, and your kids are going to tell you that, poor me, I don't get anything. But don't worry about that. You are responsible for your kids, and they will thank you later. And so having, some really serious limits, I say 30 minutes to an hour on a school day is plenty for entertainment and social media and all that. And then just being involved. It's got to be daily conversations. And there's really not going to be anything that's going to be a hack that is better than just being involved in their life, knowing what they're doing when you're not there, having some serious limits so that they can't sneak around, and then talking to them about it, asking the hard questions, and being prepared for whatever they're going to tell you.
That's so good. And I love that you mentioned sports. And I feel like they're in our kind of industry and arena of parenting. There's a lot of pushback right now
Mhm,
against
mhm,
sports and competitive
mhm.
sports and activities. And I will say all day long, I am the biggest fan of all four of my kiddos were three-sport athletes.
Mhm.
And I think it
Oh, yeah.
saved us, to be honest.
Yeah,
We were
I
doing our
agree.
job as parents, and we were getting them to church and making sure those connections were there and talking about the Bible. But they were so dang worn out every day.
Hmm.
They were
Yep.
up, morning practice and then after school practice and meets. And
Yep.
they just have so much time on their hands in the normal school day. And they have the technology now in the classroom and all of those things. It is just nice for them to get out, be physical, learn how
Hmm.
to work with other kids on a team,
Yeah. Oh,
and
yeah.
learn how to lose. That's,
Yes.
I think more important than learning how
Oh,
to
yes.
win is, how do you treat the person that you lost
Hmm.
against or whatever. And
Oh,
so
yes.
I am a huge advocate for sports for the
Yeah.
kiddos coming
Me
in.
too.
So
I just think so much character is developed. I focus a lot on character in all my writing. And I think that sports is one of the best ways to help a child learn character, because like you said, yes, winning and losing, listening to a coach who maybe you don't even like or feel like knows more than you do, but you still have to submit, teamwork, all those things are huge character developers. And I think, one of the main things is it just keeps them busy, and
yes.
kids need to be busy. Too much downtime is not good for our kids. And so when they're not busy, I'm all about giving them projects. I'll challenge them to read a difficult book and, trade in some screen time for reading, for building something, learning how to fix a car, you
Mhm.
name it. Just give them something to do. If they're not into sports, maybe it's, one of my sons became involved in speech and debate,
Mhm.
and he just fell in love with it. And
Yeah.
so there's going to be something for everyone, but certainly keep looking until you find something, because what you don't want is a kid sitting around with nothing but a device to keep them busy.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it is nice when I had a kiddo in speech and debate too. And when they have those meets and they go to those competitions, just like with sports, it's nice because then the parent isn't the bad guy. They know they have to be at the school at 5 a.m.,
Yeah,
in the dark, getting
yeah,
ready to go to the competition or whatever it is. And so,
yes.
it helps them learn responsibility of I can't stay out and go hang out with my friends
Mhm.
until 1 in the morning if I have a commitment at 5 in the
That's
morning.
right.
So
That's right.
I do love that. Okay, another quote from your book
Ooh.
that I just love. If you want your family to be close, do
Mm,
these three things: decide
mm,
it, expect it,
mhm,
talk about it. You
mhm.
recommend that parents talk about everything with their kids, referring
Yeah.
especially to cultural, social, and even political issues. Why
Mm,
is this important advice that you give to parents? Uh,
mhm.
tell us
Yeah.
a little bit about that.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. Well, I think most of us, there's a lot of things we kind of hope for and vaguely, imagine maybe when we're starting our family. And we want, most people would say, oh, I hope my family's close. And, I imagine having a good relationship with my child. But in the reality of life, we're all busy. And
Mhm.
all of a sudden we can find ourselves, you wake up and you're like, oh my goodness, my child's about to launch. And I don't know if I really know them that well, or do they know me? And do they, they might go to church with us, but do they know how to apply what we've been learning to real life things, things that are going on in the news, things that when they go to college and there's so much of this deconstruction of faith out there, and people are going to challenge and communicate new ways of looking at God and creation and all the rest. And so I'm like, no shame on anyone. Life is busy. This is hard for all of us. There are some areas that my kids went away and I was like, "Oh, I don't know if I taught them like how to budget their money." I don't think we ever really did they learn did we
Right,
ever teach that,
right,
one of them got a flat tire and I was like, "Babe, you never taught him how to change a tire." So
right.
there's no shame, but with that, and if you're listening to this and you read the book, then you are warned, you want to communicate the most important things to your kids. I'd rather have my kid not know how to change a tire, but know how to respond to challenges to their faith. And so we want to talk about things before they're things. And as a family, that means it's really ideal to use the time you have together around the dinner table, on a weekend, on vacation, in the car, like you say, to bring up some topics and to make sure that they understand what it means to have a biblical worldview. What does God's word say about all the important things that people are facing today? And to really connect with them on those deeper levels, not just are you on time? What are your grades? But how's your heart?
Mhm.
What does God's word say about this? Do you have questions? Do you have doubts? If so, please, let's talk about them now. Don't wait till you go away when
Right.
the majority of kids are walking away from the faith that they were raised with. Talk about it while they're growing up so that they have a safe place to work through questions and doubts. And then they're going to have a stronger foundation when they one day go off independently.
Mhm. That's so good. This book is Raising Amazing. I have a copy of
Mm,
it here. If you're watching
yay.
on YouTube here, Raising Amazing, it's out, right? It's out now.
Yes,
Yes,
yes, yes,
I'm so
yes.
excited. It's such a great book. What
Mm,
is your hope for the
mhm.
parents that are reading this, whether it's mom
Yeah.
or dad? What is your
Mhm.
hope for them?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think that my hope would just be that they're encouraged and inspired. No doubt, it's a tough book. I say throughout the book, I had to say everything that's written in there in the mirror to myself before it ever went in the pages. This isn't going to be super warm, fuzzy. You're doing fine. Everything's going to work out. I say, actually, there's there's a lot we need to do if we
You're
want any
not
hope because
doing fine.
because we
None
live
of us
in a
are doing
crazy
fine.
world. Yes, and we have an enemy who has a target on our backs and our kids' backs, and so I really don't have a message of it's all gonna be fine. Yes, ultimately, God is sovereign. He's got things worked out, but if you want your kids to grow up and really miss a lot of the landmines that are out there, then it's going to take some intentionality. So I hope this book is a guidebook. I hope it equips you and encourages you and makes you laugh, because really there's a lot of humor in parenting. We need a sense of humor. But I do hope that it gives us a little kick in the butt that we might need to say, let's make these years really, really count. And let's do the best we can, mom and dad. And if you're a single parent, God bless you. I hope this equips you too to do the very best you can. And with God's help, know that there's only so much we can do. And then we have to trust God to do what only He can do. But let's do our part the best we can.
It's so good. And
Thank you.
just to tag team on that, there is nothing more important than what you have
Mm,
written about in this book, like
mm,
leading your children to a godly relationship with Him
mhm,
and the things that you teach in this book. It's just, as parents, we always worry about the college fund and our retirement and the house and
mhm.
are the kids healthy and what are they eating and all the things. This is number one on the list. And I just highly recommend you guys go out and get this book. Tell our friends here online where they can find you, what your favorite places are online, and where they can find your book.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I just have enjoyed this conversation so much. So, yes, my website is home base for everything, and that's monicaswanson.com. And then I mostly hang out on Instagram, and over there I'm at Monica Swanson _. So please say hi to me. Tell me how you found me. I love to make new friends online. And yeah, it's just been a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we're excited. Excited for your book, and it's everywhere books are sold,
That's right.
Amazon, all the places there.
Exactly.
And on your website, I'm assuming there's
That's
a
right.
page for
There's
them too.
links.
So,
Yes.
all right. Well, thank you, Monica. I always love chatting with you, and I
Yes.
feel like we have a lot in common with all of
Yes.
our boys, and they're growing up, and it's just a joy. And I think you add so much value to
Mm,
this online place,
thank you.
practical daily value. So I
Thank you.
appreciate you coming on and sharing with our friends here.
Thank you so much. God bless you and aloha.
Aloha. Have a good one.